That was weird.
Okay, peace, everyone. We are live. Finally, sorry for the wait. It's been a lot of technical difficulties for the past 25 minutes.
Yes.
Not sure what just happened there, but yeah, we're finally on. Today's show is going to be about what's the best educational system for children of a Black nation. And I have my sister here, Lishy Lish. I wanted her on because she's an educator. She teaches in Vegas. And, you know, she's another wonderful sister of the BAIO. So, of course, I want to talk to her. But yeah, so I was taking a look at the world's best education systems, and it was just the facts are pretty interesting. And I shared the link with her, and she noticed something that I actually didn't pick up on right away because I was just more into like the logistics of how they were collecting the data. But she picked up on the fact that not one African nation is on this list. So it's kind of it's a harsh reality, so to speak. But yeah, so Lishy, I'll let you talk and get into it and let me know what you think about it. What's going on?
I was just really surprised. Is there an echo?
I don't hear an echo on your end. You do sound low though. You were just sounding pretty clear a minute ago, but I don't hear an echo.
I hear it. Okay. Like every time I say something, it comes back. Okay, it's gone. Oh, okay, we are having some serious technical issues today.
I know YouTube is not playing.
So, as I was saying, as I looked at the list, and there are several different lists that are here, and none of the rankings or any of the nations African, and I found that surprising.
And yeah, and guys, I put the list that we're talking about in the description box. So basically, this is called the World Top 20 Education, World's Best Education. It's called the World Top 20 Project. And what they did was they kind of went around compared different educational systems around the world and collected data. Just to see which ones will work the best. Basically, the idea is to try to get every child educated. This is what their goal was. They compared 209 education systems. I didn't look into see what exactly those 209 education systems were. I don't know. The full list is on the website, but they just do mainly the top 20, top 5 for safety, top 5 for college graduation rates, high school graduation rates. So they kind of break it down, but they stick with only the top 20 or less numbers. The full report is available there. So I don't know how many African education systems they looked into, but it's interesting that it's not on any of these lists, which, loud as it is, obviously is an issue that needs to be addressed. So I wanted to, get BAIO members' opinions on what they would think, what's the idea of the best education system for, Black students, what we want our children to learn. We do push STEM a lot, which I agree. But some of these systems are it's interesting what they focus on. This particular poll, with the way they did the numbers, is they compared, they have it right here. Each country's ranking was based on 5 education levels. So early childhood enrollment rate. So that's like pre-K, kindergarten, then elementary math, science, and reading scores. So the kind of primary schools if you're, abroad. And then middle school math, science, and reading scores. And then they compared high school graduation rates and college graduation rates. So that's how they did these rankings. So they did do a lot, focusing on a lot of math and science, and reading too. So which is, it's not a bad thing, but I know some systems, they don't really do a very Western model of education where they focus so much on math and science. A perfect example is one of the systems that has, like, historically everyone heard is one of the best school systems, is Finland. But they focus a lot more on art, and they don't really do standardized tests. So that was interesting. So like their kids are happier and they do pretty good on the state exams when it comes. when it comes time to
Mhm.
do it, but they don't do like standardized testing that stress kids out. But Lish, let me know what you think about that, and or how the poll was kind of organized or taken, because I'm sure there's some flaws with this study, but it's still interesting nonetheless.
One of the things that we know, it's been proven, studies show, as you just said, standardized tests stresses students
Hmm.
and it stresses schools. So if we know this, why are we becoming more reliant instead of less reliant
Have you
on using
noticed that
this?
with the curriculum, where you like with the current education system in America, are they pushing, even the
Yes,
teachers
I
pushing
mean,
more?
everything becomes a competition,
Oh, that's terrible.
between schools, a numbers game. Um, yeah. And then when the law was changed under, what did Obama? Trying to think. Hold on, get my facts together.
Well, the No
The law
Child
was
Left Behind,
changed to,
wasn't that like
well,
under Bush?
that was under Bush, but every president usually revamps it. They change the terminology, but the basic idea remains the same,
Okay.
um, from the original law back in the 70s. But what I was going to say, I lost my whole train of thought. Sorry. Oh, was that under Obama? He made it so we already have these tests, but now children who are disabled, have IEPs, are now required to take those same tests and are
Hmm.
counted amongst the numbers. So
Right. And
you have
I
that
remember
whole
when
population that's even more stressed.
that, yeah, that is stressful,
It,
because
it
how do
creates
you
a
include
lot of anxiety in students, a lot of anxiety in
them?
students.
Yeah. And testing anxiety is real, because I know I had
Mhm.
a serious case of it, even in my adult years in graduate school. So, and I'm sure some
Mhm.
people in the chat can attest to that. Like, testing anxiety is like a serious,
Yes.
it's actually really a problem. It's
Yes.
really stressful, especially when, they put so much on the line too. It's like when I was in grad school, it was like, yo, if you fail this test, you're getting kicked out. Like
Yeah.
that was not helpful to know that prior to taking a test. So that was really, really stressful. And everything was just, crossing your fingers and hoping it worked out.
Right.
Um, but again, this is like their system of how they do things. But one interesting thing that a lot of you probably remember is during the Bush era, when they came out with that No Child Left Behind movement with the
Mhm.
education system. And if you paid attention, like, it sounded good when he put it out there, but in actual theory and action, I've heard teachers say like that was the worst thing, because what it did was, it, like you said, it pushed forward more standardized testing, even if kids weren't ready or weren't prepared. So it's almost, it placed everyone on the same, um okay, it placed everyone on the same kind of expectation spectrum, even if, and this is like comparing charter schools to even low income area public schools.
Right.
What is that? Hold on. You guys hear that?
I hear it.
What in the world is that? Okay, so it puts I don't turn mine's two down, because then you guys won't hear me. But it put all these schools on the same actual level, even though they weren't. Yeah, I hear that too. I don't know what the hell that was. It just started out of nowhere, and nothing around me
I hear
moved.
it too. Okay.
Um, something happening. Oh shit. But okay, but anyway, so but the kids who weren't really academically prepared because they went to a school in a low income area that,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
didn't have all the resources, was still required to meet the same standards as the kids who went to
Yeah.
schools in, charter schools, or went to schools in suburban or rural areas where they had better resources. So you would see how that cleared up. So a teacher teaching a class with like 40 kids, was those 40 kids was expected to meet the same standards of another teaching the class of 15 kids, which obviously makes a big difference with how many kids in the class, who's going to learn what. So that was the fault of that no kid left behind, no child left behind rule kind of movement that Bush pushed through. It basically dragged the kids who were underdeveloped in their education, dragged them along, like forced them to move to the next level, even if they were not academically prepared for the next level. And that system was set in place where it basically set them up to fail on purpose. Because you would see how they would fail. They wouldn't make it to the next level. If they got to the next level, it was going to be, they were going to more likely have a chance of struggling. So
Right.
maintain and struggling to maintain that. And so, a lot of high school dropout rates increased because of that. A lot of, kids failed standardized testing because of that. I mean, and you can obviously guess which population was hit the hardest because of this. So, I mean, you see like these campaigns and movements that sound good, and then you're thinking like, oh yeah, that sounds good, yeah, no child left behind, okay, my child's going to learn more. And in theory, no, that's not what happened. It was the opposite. Even more reason we need to get our own.
Well, one of the reasons, and this is just my opinion, that it sounds good to so many of us. Sorry. Yeah, serious stuff going on. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I'm just going to
Okay,
mute my microphone for a second because I don't know if it's
hold
that
on.
making a sound.
You sound really low though.
Okay, I'll turn it up a little bit more. That should be better. But yeah, it's weird. It's making these weird ass.
Um,
But go
yeah,
ahead.
that was just weird. Like we're just having some serious technical issues.
Yeah, sorry
Y'all
everyone in
finally
the
paying
chat.
attention?
This is like some weird shit going on YouTube right now that is like
Yeah, we've
really
got
freaking
volume
me
issues.
out. Video issues, volume issues. Like it's just coming out of nowhere. So sorry everybody. We're just really distracted. I'm trying to stay on topic. But all right, you could go.
I know I've lost my I lost it.
Oh, we were talking about the education system, no child left behind rule and how that worked. Because what did how long you been teaching actually? I forgot to ask that.
So I've been teaching three, working strictly as a teacher, but working in work prior in education in a, I guess, counseling setting. That was five. So eight
Okay.
altogether. But I've
Okay.
worked in social services the
Right. So
last
you worked
almost
with
20 years.
children for quite some time.
Children, adults, developmentally delayed,
Okay.
challenged, mental health,
Okay. So no,
underprivileged. Yeah,
that's pretty good. Okay. So
yeah. So I've kind of run the spectrum as far as age groups, age ranges, and working in different capacities. But most of it, up until I guess 8 years ago, was strictly just mental health therapy, counseling,
mm-hmm. What
hospice. So,
so
and
what do
my
you
favorite group is little ones.
okay, what do you teach? Are you teaching a particular grade? I know we talked about this before, but that was like weeks ago. So are you teaching a particular
So,
grade now or
what happens the way our school is set up? Um, I guess we still say K through 5
okay, yeah.
in the elementary.
Mhm.
I've taught all the grades, and presently am teaching kinder, first, third,
All right, that works then.
and I think I had fourth grade this year. So it kind of changes. It may end up by the end of the year, I may be teaching all the grades at the same time, or in one day. It just kind of fluctuates.
Okay, so looking at this stat of polls, I mean, the way they did this breakdown, they broke it down into kind of like they say early childhood enrollment, which is I'm guessing is like pre-K, kindergarten. I know
Mhm.
other different countries use different terms. And then there's primary levels, which I'm not 100. Primary levels, is that like first grade to fifth grade? Or how does that? And then secondary levels, is that middle school?
Usually primary is K1 and 2.
Oh, okay, okay, K1 and 2. And then secondary levels are from 3 to 5 or 3 to
Yeah.
6? Okay, and then
As a matter of fact, let me make sure. I'm looking because didn't they list what their rankings were? Hold on. I want to make sure because what I gave you was how it's usually ranked in elementary schools. But if they're looking primary being elementary, secondary being middle school, let me make
mhm.
sure. Give me 1 sec. I didn't see it.
Yeah, you can take a look at it. It's with like if you scroll up, you can see it.
Okay,
Um,
yes, I'm sorry. So for
oh no,
this
you're
one, they're saying that primary is 6 to 11. So
Oh, I see. They have the ages here.
first through
Yeah.
six. Um,
Right. 6 to 11 years old,
I'm
lower
sorry.
secondary.
First, yeah. So they're basically elementary school being primary, middle school being secondary, and
Secondary. Okay, and that's what I
that's how
was
they got it broken
thinking.
down. Okay.
I wasn't sure. That's what I was thinking. But like you notice it changes throughout. What's really interesting with these is basically they go through, like we were saying, early childhood enrollment, primary levels, secondary levels, high school graduation rate, and college
Yes.
graduation rate, and they break it down to the top 5 of each group. And the United States is not in any of these groups. As I'm looking through it, it's mostly Asia, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe. Like I'll skip early childhood enrollment because that can definitely change. But I want to go to high school graduation rates. So the high school graduation rate is number 1 is Finland, number 2 Japan, number 3 Russia, number 4 New Zealand, and number 5 Netherlands. And I want to say the number next to it is percentage, but I know this changes with different rankings that they did. So I'm not 100% sure if that's percentage because they have like 99 next to Finland and they're in the number 1 spot. Um, what was interesting about this is I wanted to focus more on kind of like the primary, secondary, primary, secondary levels and just that, like up to high school. I really didn't want to look into the college stats because I know that can change drastically, and we all have our issues with how colleges are done here and how much debt people are accruing for this. Um, but they did include college in it, more so just college graduation rates, which it is pretty low in the United States. I didn't look at the stats for a lot of other countries, but for the United States, what I found interesting is under the National Center for Education Statistics, and this is another link. I didn't send it to you, Lishi, but I have to send it to you. It was just interesting to read. But it basically showed what did they say? College graduation rates for what do I want to say for 59% for people who have completed a bachelor's degree from start to finish. Like if they transferred schools, I think they took them out of the number. But if they stayed at the same institution and you went to a 4-year college and you went for a bachelor's degree, 59% in 2015 specifically graduated. Only 59%. Then they extended it because a lot of times in college, people stay longer because they go in part time or what have you. Stuff happens. They have to take a semester off. So they extended it to 6-year graduation rates. And they showed that at public institutions, 59% did graduate. At
Mm-hmm.
private nonprofit institutions, 66% graduated, and at private for-profit institutions, only 23% graduated. I was like, damn. So, the really private schools clearly hard. People just gave up. And I'm guessing, wild guess, it was probably financial resources because private for-profit institutions are expensive as hell. So that doesn't surprise me at all. What they also found is what did they say? It was another interesting fact. It was high for females, 6 years for males, 6-year graduation rate for first full-time students. Hold on. Okay. In particular, 6-year graduation rates were highest at institutions that were most selective, meaning the ones that it's harder to get into, which makes sense. That actually makes sense. And the graduation rates were lowest at the schools that had open admissions, basically a school that was easy to get into. Their graduation rate was 32%. If you went to a school that's harder to get into, the graduation rate was 88%. So, I mean, I'm actually shocked that it went that high of a number, but that does make sense, because if it's harder to get into the school, then the
Right.
student applying to the school is going to want to work harder to get it done because they know what
Right.
they went through.
They're of a certain caliber. Right.
Yeah, it's a certain caliber. So, that doesn't surprise me. And if the student who really don't know what they want to do and just like, oh, I'm just going to go to college because everyone says go to college. And then
Right.
that's that's what happens. So, Hope has a question in the chat. I forgot to say peace, everyone. Peace, everyone in the chat. Thanks for joining us. Had a lot of technical difficulties, but it looked like we're catching up now. So thanks for being patient. Holub has a question. He said, should a nation provide education to its citizens via taxation, or should private institutions within the nation only provide education to the people that can afford it? I prefer the taxation, like Vic Shepard just said. Yeah, for sure. Like that private stuff. I mean, we can, go on with what, people would prefer in Afrikstan, but I prefer taxation. I want everybody to be educated. We see what happens in these countries where the population is poorly educated. Things just don't work out. And I actually wrote it here in the description box. It says, it goes without saying the importance of education when you strive for a successful and content, independent nation. The countries with the highest number of children out of school also have the highest illiterate adult rates. That leads to highest unemployment rates. That leads to largest population living in poverty. And one of the things these countries have in common is these countries are not committed to educate their children. So I would for sure prefer all children be educated via taxation, if that's the case. And I'm sure for the members of the BAIO, with what we want, that's not a problem. It's like, no, for sure, we want our children educated. But we're not gonna, I prefer not to go the private route and separate and, only certain people get educated and certain, who can afford it. Because that's what's happening in a lot of these countries. Like actually one of our members in Uganda, he explained to me how it works. He basically said, if he did primary school and some of secondary, but he wasn't able to finish high school because you have to have money you basically have to pay. His family didn't have money, so he couldn't finish. So, and he had like a different term. He's like, so technically, I could be considered illiterate. But I explained to him, I was like, if you can read and write, you're not illiterate, but you are, I guess, could be considered poorly educated. I guess you'd fall in that category. But so we clearly don't want that. And, in Uganda, they're going through all kinds of shit right now, especially with Bobby Wine. And you can just look at the news and see what these people want, what they're trying to fight for. And Bobby Wine just went back, hopefully things work out for him, because, we know that he's potentially going to be tried and charged with treason just for speaking out against a corrupt government. So what Hope says here, there isn't one person in the nation that provides education and healthcare who complains about high taxes. That is true. Like if I'm paying, I'm more than willing to pay taxes if it helps everybody. I'm willing to pay for it in the taxes.
Right.
And that is very true. One question I actually do have, and this is perfect to bring up to BAIO members, because I was thinking a lot about the curriculum, like what do we want to teach? What do we want to teach our children, especially starting early ages? If you wanted to push for how hard you want to push for technology at an early age, give me your thoughts on that, because in Rwanda, they're starting very early. Like they have this, every child has a laptop rule, because they want their children to learn technology and, using computer and basically working towards what the future is, what's going to happen in the future. But these kids start as young as, I want to say, first grade, roughly, like the kindergarten, first grade age. All these kids
they're starting to use computers in kindergarten.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's true. Are they doing that here in the U.S. too? Okay. So
I don't know if it's for the same
right.
I don't know if it's for the same purposes.
I don't know.
But
And
as far as kids being able to use the computer and navigate, yeah, they were teaching that as early
yeah,
as
teaching that
kindergarten.
early. I mean, yeah, by in by grade school, they're on social media, which is like, which this is not what we wanted you to do this for. But yeah, but they'll learn it. So another thing where I figured this
But
would,
I think they're talking about more of the, sorry about that,
yeah, no, 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 go ahead.
the understand, like they're teaching it from a different perspective. Their kids are
Okay.
using it as far as going, understanding the technology and programming, those kind of tracks
Right, right.
in the way they interact with the
And
computer
getting,
versus,
yeah,
our kids just taking tests on them and running through
that's
different
true. The kids here are just
apps.
beginning to take tests and everything. And Holub just made a good point. He's saying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics that should be required in the curriculum. Everything else should be an elective, as far as I'm concerned. That now, Holub, I agree with you, but that is where probably a lot of BAIO members will have debate. Um, yeah, there's room to study art and philosophy. That's fair. Uh, so they're going to have a debate because I was thinking of it. I was like, oh man, we all grew up, had to take some history class, and we can all attest to the fact that living in the US, like when it came to history, that it was terrible. There was a lot of stuff that
Yes.
wasn't shared. So like a lot of stuff we didn't learn until after like we became adults, after we got out of the education system. So then the question's going to come in, do we make history a debate? Not we're not going to make history a debate. The Hope is starting trouble. He's like, I'm ready to debate it. Bring it on. I don't even
No.
care to debate this because the question is going to come in from probably other members because we are a byproduct of the conscious community that they're going to want. They may want a lot more history involved in the education. And then the question is, who is qualified to teach this history? Because there's a lot of other, there's so many, like everyone has their thing of what people should read, if you notice.
Right.
And because we are a
Yes.
byproduct of, the what's been going on in the conscious community,
Yeah.
people are going to come in with that mindset. People would join us and they have that mindset of like, okay, we should read this, we should study this,
I,
doctor.
I, I think the one thing about, especially when you're thinking about, the BAIO, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about forming communities and like minds coming together.
Right.
So it's, what do we want our, like it's how much history is very important.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It
the
is. It's
foundation we need to
important, but then
build
how
on.
much?
But
Correct.
history can be interwoven so many different ways.
Yes.
When you think of, I grew up with social studies and things like
I
that,
agree.
where
Yep,
you
I
were
grew up
acting,
in studies.
right? Real, history, American history, of course.
Right.
But
People going, we're
as
going to
you
want
went
to
into
know
math,
history.
especially in math, there's a lot of history in math.
Right.
So I think that we need a good foundation with his history, but it also needs to be interwoven into the sciences. um, Reading, it can be throughout, because when we start referencing the history of where this started, we're going to reference our people.
Yep.
So you can constantly keep history in the mix, in my opinion. And but should we start with it? I think it's very important.
That's
But
a
in
good
all the
one.
other courses, we always need to refer back to history, because if not, our kids need to understand, who the great Imhotep was and what he did and what he brought.
Right. And I think I'm looking at what people are saying in chat now, and I can see Holmes is like he agree with you. Although I like your plan to kind of put it in interwoven it into what we're teaching with the other subjects. But he
So
said
I'm like, yes, definitely, we need a solid history foundation. It should be
yeah.
there, but it should also be interwoven throughout everything.
And yeah, and
That's what
Vic
I see.
Shepard said it best. He said history is a tricky subject. It is.
Yes.
Holub said the reason why I say history should be an elective is because there's no consensus or agreement on history. That is true, which is why I brought that up, because I was thinking about this yesterday. Like,
Mm-hmm.
shoot, how are we going to get history in this? And then STEM is STEM. You can't debate objective reality. 2 + 2 = 4 is not subject to debate. Jesus and Muhammad are another story. You're just gonna start trouble here, aren't you?
Okay.
This isn't, yeah, okay. He said our history and our culture definitely needs to be taught. That isn't
Yes.
even a discussion. That, and yeah, that I agreed with. There's no when you're encountering a bad argument. Okay. So I that's why I was thinking of it yesterday. I was like, wow, we're gonna have a lot of opinions on how history should be taught and what should be taught.
But and here's, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean
You
that's fair.
know, I would like the fact, I mean, we need to learn about all the different viewpoints of our history
Dawood
because
says, I
all of them have
think
certain
tax
commonalities.
Jesus and Muhammad.
I
A
wasn't
lot of people are gonna
talking
agree with you on
necessarily
that.
biblical.
He said we should tax Jesus and Muhammad. That's it. So that, yeah, a lot of people are gonna agree with you on that. But I just wanted to put that out there because I was like, that's probably something we should consider when designing, a curriculum and everything.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna be tricky. But you're right, like there's courses that should be absolute, like no argument, like you're gonna learn this, and then we can decide what goes into the electives.
Yes.
Um and so that's just something I wanted to bring up. So going back to
That's a
this.
great question. Great point to make.
Okay, so as long as we're having the debates in our own schools and institutions, I'm fine with this. That is
Right.
fine. We can agree with that. So, interesting enough, on this list, they put for the world best education system, the stats that we were talking about.
Yes.
They broke down the safe schools or this,
Yeah, I saw that, and that's a new stat they put
yeah,
in.
I was like, oh, okay, but like, listen to this, guys. Number one safe school in the world, or safe education systems, countries that have the safest schools is one is Luxembourg, two is Finland, three is Estonia, four is Switzerland, and five is Slovenia. Which I wasn't even thinking of East Europe, like Slovenia. I wouldn't have
Mhm.
guessed that one, but that was interesting. But yeah, so say I mean, I don't see safety being an issue.
Can I?
Oh yeah, jump
So,
in. Go ahead.
do you
For
see
sure.
where they also list the most unsafe
Wait, where
schools?
is that?
The list below.
Let me see. I didn't see that. Let me see.
What did I click on? I clicked on something. Hold on.
They're added the completion rate of a school safety. Oh, you clicked on the school safety link?
Yes, I clicked. Yes. Okay.
Oh, okay, so let me
So click on that, and it'll
wait.
go
Read
down
the
to the
unsafe school
target
because I didn't
nation,
even
which
look at
children need the most help right now,
that.
and
Okay.
check out those countries. You were wondering where we
Oh, breaks
were.
my heart.
We were looking at the wrong list.
So yeah, so we're gonna go into it says they break it down to the target nations children need the most help right now. Below is a list of 46 countries that have been identified as the most unsafe environment for children to attend school. Number one on the list. This breaks my heart to say. Number one, and this is written in, well, actually, it's not number one. This is all written in alphabetical order as I'm looking at it.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. It's all in alphabetical order. So, let's think of it in that way. But the first one, sorry, I just clicked out of that screen, is Angola. The second, Afghanistan. Third, Burundi. Fourth, Central African Republic. Five, Chad. Six, Comoros. Then it goes on and on. Seventh is Democratic Republic of Congo, Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, Djibouti, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Haiti, India, Iraq, Kiribati, Kosovo, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, Mali, Marshall Island, Mexico, Micronesia, Mozambique, Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, Pakistan, Peru, Russia, Sierra Leone, Solomon Islands, Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, Togo, Turkey, Tuvalu, Ukraine, West Bank and Gaza, Yemen, and Zimbabwe. Now, again, all this I've read in alphabetical order. Is yep, like Hope said, all African countries.
Yeah.
And it was right, a lot of Civil War bullshit.
Predominantly. Yeah.
So yeah, so we got our work cut out, our work cut out for us. But it's anything that's worth worth it. It's got to be worth fighting for. Things
Yes.
that we're fighting for. It doesn't come easy. So, we know what we're looking at. We know the beast that we're looking at. So, just makes us want to
Yeah.
prep and
I
plan.
just
And
found that very interesting.
yeah. Right, let's see. Then they have another list. We have not agreed to protect their children that attend school who have not. Oh, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The
You
next
see the
list, it
countries
says,
that didn't swear
it,
or wouldn't swear?
yeah, there's like, here's a list of 33 of the 46 countries who have not agreed to protect their children that attend school. That's wow. Again, in alphabetical order: Angola, Burundi, Comoros, Djibouti, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Haiti, India, Iraq, Kiribati, Kosovo, Libya, Mali, Marshall Islands, Mexico, Micronesia, Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, Pakistan, Peru, Russia, Solomon Island, Syria, Togo, Turkey, Tuvalu, Ukraine, West Bank, and Gaza, Yemen, and Zimbabwe. So basically the same list. And these countries straight up said, we will not protect our children going to school. That breaks my heart. I hope you're right. This is why we're needed on the continent. Like even more, like the paradigm has to change. It has to change because, like, what's gonna happen? Like basically the entire with the damn near the entire continent is on those lists. Not all 54 countries, but most of them. We can agree to that. So we definitely a change is needed. And I genuinely believe African Americans, African diasporans going to the continent, building infrastructure, creating jobs, doing all the things we want to do is going to be a huge shift in that, it'd be like a huge step in making that change.
I
Um,
agree.
which is why I love my brothers and sisters at the BAIO because we have to make this happen. Um, but yeah, that list is interesting. Dawood says social studies was more like the same white bullshit every year for 12 years. That's exactly what it was because I remember books back then deliberately avoiding the word slave and labeling them as workers. I was like, wait, workers? You mean slaves? But then they didn't have it in those books. So that goes to tell you how much America was really trying to erase that history. And he says, by the time you got to high school, you was well steeped into the Caucasian being supreme. And Lishy, you can probably explain that way more than I can. Dawood says, by the time you got to high school, you was well steeped into the Caucasian being supreme.
And in all honesty, I agree. Um, the one thing that no one ever they of course they would not take this into account is that confidence,
Hmm. And you talked about this
and
before.
that confidence is built up constantly for those children. It's in their history. It's in the subjects that they teach. Who they quote as the father of this and the father of that kind of stuff. It's all around. So, if you could walk the world like it was yours,
Hmm.
you know, how awesome would that be
And I mean,
to
and one of
walk around in that kind of confidence? For us to be able to walk around in that kind of confidence, you know,
that would make all the difference. Like I
it would
said,
make a huge, huge
right,
difference
being able
because it
to
changes
control.
the way we interact with the world. The way melanated men interact with the world.
Hmm.
Finally get a chance to play offense.
Hope says it here. People can put any issue they want at the top, but unless we get Black African men and women who actually love their people in positions of power. Very true. I agree. I mean, and actually one of the sisters in LA who I was talking to yesterday, she said this before on a previous show she was on with me. She's like, why would this system, this current education system, why would they ever want to educate Black people? Like she's like, they live and profit off of us being at the bottom. Why would they want to empower us? We can't look to them to empower us. We can't look to them who control our education system to, be the ones to actually, help us out as Black people. Like, we're going to have to do
Yeah.
this ourselves. And that's very true. I mean, you
I
said,
think so many of us are willing to accept that,
I know.
and it's a shame. I totally
It's
agree.
it's it's sad. Yeah, it is sad.
You know, um, but that's because a lot of us don't really understand the system of white supremacy. You
I mean,
know,
I'm just.
the system, how it works, what this is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't really understand it, you can certain things you just can't see.
Yeah, Ronan Black says
You're right. There's no need to change the system. It's operating just like it's supposed to.
yep, art of systems thinking. Ronan Black says history in America is crafted by the conqueror, and the conqueror has no interest or desire to properly educate those he has defeated and
Exactly.
demoralized. Very
And
true.
what did Dr. Clark say and all the others? You know, the fact that we would expect them to is crazy. That's our job.
Yeah. Hope
It's
says
our
in a
job to teach our
functional
kids.
society, children are educated at home and trained in school on how to utilize their education. That's a good point. Hope. I don't think we consider that often enough or really think about that. But he
Mm-hmm.
says in a functional society, children are educated at home and trained in school on how to utilize their education.
Right.
That actually is very true, and that's very that point is not brought to the light enough. I think a lot of us forget that or don't even think of that. So we definitely got our work cut out for us, but everything's open for discussion on how to do this. But yeah, looking at this list, what they did when they did this poll, they broke it down into 4 quarters of the year of 2017, last year. So the first quarter, it started with a different list of the top 20 schools, and then they followed these schools or these education systems over the year, and every 3 months they would reassess what school is doing what, and at the end of the year they kind of just put it all together and say these are the top ones who did everything based on what I said. Basically, what was it? The early childhood enrollment rates, elementary math and science and reading scores, middle school math and science and reading scores, high school graduation rates, and college graduation rates. So going through this list, number one school with the world's best education system of 2017 was South Korea. Number two was Japan. Number three was Russia. Four was Hong Kong. Five was China. Six was UK. Seven was Singapore. Eight was Finland. Nine was Denmark. 10 was Israel. 11, Netherlands. 12, Slovenia. 13, Canada. 14, Ireland. 15, Norway. 16, USA. 17, Estonia. 18, New Zealand. 19, Taiwan. And 20 was Italy. And like I looked at the list, this is at the end of 2017. I looked at the list at the beginning of 2017, and some of these schools weren't even on it. Like when I looked at the beginning of 2017, US was 20. Right now, it moved up to 16. By the end of 2017, moved up to the number 16, and it was 20 at the beginning of the year 2017. On this list, the end of 2017 list, France is not on the list. It was like neck and neck with the USA. It was number 19, I think. And Finland was actually number one at the beginning. So it's interesting. Obviously, things change throughout the year when they
Right.
actually collect all the grades and all that stuff and all
But the
this.
overall top 10.
Right. So, and what do you guys feel about standardized tests? Like, you can speak a lot on this. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember we had what was like a Regents exam was in New York. There's a lot of Regents exams in high school. That was stressful. Or like AP courses, which I didn't think was an issue, but then it became one. I was like, well, why do we have to divide it? So it's like, like you could take a government class, like regular government, or they only offered government class as an AP course. So like that was just strange to me in high school. I remember going through that and just like, what the hell? But Will Hope says here, since Sister is in the education system, I'm interested to know in her perfect world, how would she design an educational system in our nation? That's a good question.
Well, number one, it would I would not plan on it being just me.
It would be just you. No,
um,
I don't think it would be
it could
just
be
you. You would
a group
definitely
of
have help.
us.
It's just your
Uh,
idea.
because I
Just
mean,
your idea.
and you know, because my idea has is not just one person; it's a group of like minds coming together, um,
Right.
and realizing that not every child learns the same.
Yes.
So, and really applying that, I'm a strong believer in children learn differently, and when you tap into how they learn, they do well.
Mm-hmm.
um, we say that a lot, but that's not really what's going on. So I would like to see it really embraced
Right.
from, hands-on learning. Some people
Well,
do well with rote memorization.
before,
Different
yeah, before you answer the question, just to kind of help you lead into the answer to that question, can you tell us now, based on being in the education system, what are the things that work for and against the children learning from what you've seen, what you've noticed? I know class sizes has always been one of them, but
class sizes are, yes, class sizes. Um, the way money is distributed in schools.
yep,
Um,
that's correct.
Here in, Clark, in Las Vegas, it's constantly changing. Classrooms change, teachers change. It shouldn't be like that because we deal with a transient population already here. So
So, is it like different teachers teaching like the same class, or they just flip that
no,
around?
what you have are people either leaving because they can't handle all the things that are going
Oh,
on,
I see. I see.
or budget cuts and oh, it's furlough. Oh, we just lost 5 teachers, but they've been there since the beginning of the year, and here we are, how many weeks into, months into the school year, and boom, five, 4 or 5 teachers are gone. Now you've got to reshuffle classes,
Oh,
and that can happen, 2 to 3 times a year.
wow. 2 to 3
Yeah,
times a year. That's really disruptive.
at least definitely twice. Once in the beginning, and definitely at the end. It's that's chaotic. I think all that stuff trickles down into the classroom. So when you're able to have I guess a steady funding stream that's going into education, um, it helps teachers, it helps students, it allows for bigger ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and really, thinking outside the box models that work. All that takes money though. But when those kind of options are available, and you see it in a lot of those countries
Mm-hmm.
that are on that list for top schools, they don't educate their children the way we do here in the United States in the public setting.
That's true. What do
And
you
we
know
see
about
it in
those other?
private settings. We've got different models, Montessori model, different
Yeah,
models, but those are all private settings.
which divides up a lot of how education is going to
Yeah.
be dispersed or how it's going to happen. But what have you noticed from the other educational systems that could work like in our future nation? Like basically going back to Hope's question.
Um,
You can definitely like look at other models and see like,
right.
okay, is this something that's going to work for us or
There's a time and a place for kids to, I think number one, beginning and end times of schools. We're building our own nation. We need to really, we want to build the best possible nation that we can, right? We want to build the
right.
best possible school system that we can. So let's look at the things that are going wrong or the things that we don't agree with in the system that
So
we're
that
currently in.
list can go on forever.
No, 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 no. I mean, because you have to have a framework.
All
And
right.
as an educator, had this been on both sides, including the parent, still on both sides. There are certain things that stick out if you follow education.
Hmm.
So, big thing has always been start times.
Okay. Yeah.
The start time thing doesn't work. It doesn't. You know, the length of the school day, it doesn't work.
Right.
So, I think we need to start with some of the basics of, you know, what time we make, the length of our school day.
Vic
How much
Shepherd.
freedom are we going to give our teachers? Of course, we'll give them a framework of, well, that depends too, I guess.
Right.
Are we going to segregate science, have science tracks, math tracks? There's so many ways that you could do it. Um, so many different models that work, but
Tell me
none of
something.
them are rote standardized test memorization. None of those
Right.
models in any of those schools. That's the definite. We know that that's not
That's a
working.
definite standard. Yeah, I've heard that one.
So let's shrink class sizes.
Yeah, I
You know,
definitely agree with that because
let's diversify the curriculum. I mean, really diversify it. Let's bring back, vocational training. The arts.
sure.
I mean, if we're going to we need to make the playing field as level as possible. Everybody has equal opportunity. That's why everyone should pay taxes towards it.
When I was looking into Finland education system, they went on and on and how art is really important. They say what it does
Yes.
is it promotes
Yes.
creativity, which is important. I like that idea, especially if our children is going towards STEM, especially engineering. Like we want them to be able to create,
Yes.
but you can definitely incorporate both. Where you teach them how to be free. I guess I don't want to say free spirited, but more so thinking freely in the sense of how to create something, and
Right.
then they can apply that towards the sciences. And
Yes.
now you have inventors, and you have people who's going to design new systems, and it'll help them towards problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that idea. But tell me something. Did they cut out recess
Yes.
in schools?
Some schools
I
don't
didn't
have
know
it at
that.
all.
I had
Um,
no idea that was
there's some kind of wording in the law that they're allowed to have it in, elementary, but it's nothing like what we used to have. I know what I had growing up.
yeah. So wait, you
It's
mean
nothing
even
like
in
that.
junior high,
Yeah,
there's no recess?
yeah,
Oh my God,
um,
that breaks my heart. I'm like, I remember going out and
yeah.
well, high school it was more so just cutting class and you had gym, but it was still like I can't believe they
The higher schools, no, you don't get a. Yeah, it's not like it is in elementary school.
wow. Because yeah, Vic Shepherd said our kids should have recess. But yeah, so
Well,
it sounds like
our kids should have access to a lot of different things. Definitely,
right.
longer recess, more time outdoors. More time. I'm not an artiste, but I recognize what the arts can do. We need to make that stuff
Right.
available. I just remember having options when I was in school, more options than the kids have now. And once they kind of cut out a lot of things, you know, um, and I might be wrong on this. And can someone check if possible? I'm going to try to look on my computer, but I'm trying to think when a lot of these laws started passing. Was that right around the time they started taking voc ed out? Was that
Oh
when I think
no.
we started going towards the standardized test thing?
Right. I don't even know. That's
I think it was.
that would be, I'm sure, and I'm sure we can look into it because I'm sure they studied that. That would be interesting. But yeah, I definitely agree on terms of vocational training. Now, do you think it should go vocational like how early? High school? Would that be like the best way to start, like just from that age, or even sooner? Or
Definitely, we need to start sooner.
okay,
Honestly, they need to, in my opinion, be middle school, especially when boys start,
right. I agree.
uh, good way to channel a lot of energy, excess energy for them.
Because
Um,
I found it like like
that rite of passage time. So I think sixth grade
I live
would be
out
good.
here in Alaska and I have to travel to these villages, the Alaska Native villages and see the kids at the school and everything and I get to see kind of like how their school is set up and, what they're teaching the kids. For the most part, it's all the same. Again, all of them fall under the American education system.
Mhm.
Though there's like a good and a bad to it. The good is some schools there's a small amount of kids, so class sizes aren't as bad because there's only, that village may have, hell, 50 kids, and that's 50 kids from K to 12. So class sizes aren't that bad, but also the catch 22 on that is they might have less available teachers to go out there because it's not as many kids. And the other schools who have more kids will get more teachers. They do get a lot of grant money, state funded grant money. So some of they can get remodeled stuff and get a little bit more extracurricular activities. And some of these schools I noticed they have shop class, which I think is so important because it teaches the native boys and everything how to build stuff. Like out here, they build their sleds, build their boats, do carpentry kind of things. And they start this in the middle school. Like you said, like they have a shop teacher, they'll start using that. Some schools have a home ec class, which I remember what, existed back in the day. My sisters used to take home ec class, but that doesn't anymore. But I mean, it did teach
I
women
remember from that.
basically how to cook. Some of you guys probably ran into women who could burn boiling water. So, and that's probably part of the issue. No one's
Yeah,
really
you could
learning
do
how to
cooking, or you could do
do
sewing.
sewing.
You
Right,
know, I
exactly.
preferred the cooking part. So, I had
Right.
a sister who preferred the sewing. Now I wish
And
I had learned to sew.
and and so like looking at that system, I'm like, okay, I could see like and I know in the lower 48, what we refer to in Alaska as lower 48 is basically the rest of the United States. It doesn't have a lot of these, they don't have these classes anymore. And it may be primarily in just the limited, communities of just the native population because those communities are so small, it's so limited in number. But I know throughout like regular public school system and stuff, and hell, maybe even in the private schools, I don't know if they teach those kind of vocational courses anymore that will kind of help, like they really out here, they'll teach the children, all right, this is how you do laundry, this is how you cook, this is, I mean, it's like household stuff. A lot of them will learn at home watching their parents, but still, I'm like, a lot of people still don't know how to do that. So that's really important to go through. But if we want to teach that in our nation, I guess we can have those as elective courses. That obviously is up for discussion. Is food for thought. But so Duluth
That's a
says, I
good
really think
question.
this should be an ongoing discussion for the BAIO. I didn't realize how fascinating this is. I know, right, dude? This is why I would have I started looking into this yesterday. I was like, wow, we got a lot, like there's a lot of detail to this that we need to consider. And it's interesting. You're absolutely right. It's very interesting. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So yeah, he said we have so much to talk about, y'all. We do.
We do because
We do.
with I mean, it's if you
And
think of depending on what your theory, is regarding the purpose of education,
mhm.
um, there are a lot of different viewpoints.
Yeah.
So,
There is.
we definitely have
And I knew that was the
some
case, which is
discussions.
kind of why I put this out there,
Yeah,
especially since we're starting to do STEM shows more often.
yeah,
So I was like, okay, this is something we really need to think about. Like, how are we going to teach our children? What do we want them to learn? What's going to be required? What isn't? And again, all of this is up for discussion, up for debate, and keep it fair. How are we going to design our grading system? Do we want to do standardized tests? It sounds like no. Like that, I'm thinking the consensus on that is going to be like, all right, let's put that out.
because like you said, that puts the one thing that
It's
we
a lot
know
of
is that we're
pressure.
diverse, and if we
Yeah,
recognize diversity, we recognize that children learn differently. So you
right,
can't test everyone one way.
right.
You know, um, yeah, standardized tests are just
No, it was. I remember in high school, like
so frustrating.
getting ready for Regents exams. I was like, "What is this?" And it was like different ones. You had to do ones with the Regents for chemistry, the Regents for biology, all that shit. That was
And I
just like
always think of what hits most kids the hardest
and
is
math,
the
and
reading and
then like
writing.
right. Yeah, that, and then the SAT, and then, like,
Hmm.
a lot of schools didn't have a SAT prep course. I had to take one outside of school. Like, so what I would, oh my God. Now I'm thinking, I'm like, God, it's bringing back bad memories of high school. Just like, I remember going to high school, it was almost like going to work, which was terrible. Like, first of all, I went to, oh, peace, Kofi. Thanks for joining us. I went to, like, I lived in Queens, in Jamaica, Queens. The closest, I'm like in the St. Albans, Hollis area. So the closest high school to me was, at the time, it was Andrew Jackson High School. It was like, well, walking about 5 blocks, but it had a bad reputation. So I really didn't want to go to that high school. It was like, like, oh my God, all the ghetto kids go there and this, and it's just always fights and guns and all, like, all this craziness. So I didn't want to go to that high school. So I was like, well, I want to go to what I thought was a smart school, and or a school that was in an area with a lot of, quote unquote, what you think is smart, challenging people. So I decided to go to high school in a Korean neighborhood. Because thankfully in high school I could do this. But what I didn't know, and this school is so far from me, I kid you not, when I was in high school, I had to take either I had to take 2 buses, and that would be like an hour and 15-minute ride, or I had to take a bus and 2 trains to school, because I went to school, Flushing High School in Flushing, New York, before that school turned to shit. Apparently, after I graduated, all hell broke loose and they just went in the toilet. But anyway, when I chose that high school, it was in a Korean, or, like a Chinese Korean neighborhood. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to learn what the Chinese kids learn. I'm going to learn all kinds of science and physics and all this stuff. And, I'm not going to be in the ghetto area with those bad schools and everything. So I go to that school, and come to find out, it's like a bunch of Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, because it was like on the border of the Bronx. So, so it's like and tons of Black people too, a few white people, and just some Asian. It had a very low Asian rate. Apparently, all the Asian kids went to school in Manhattan. so I was just like, what? But going to school every day was like an hour and 30-minute process. So I remember getting to school, and God help me if I had a first period class. That was a mess. I played sports just because, my mom was like, you better figure out a way to pay college because I can't pay for it. So that's on you. So I played all these sports trying to get scholarships. I ended up doing so. It's for soccer, actually. But so, like, I had to do all the gym courses. I really couldn't cut class. I would get kicked off the sports teams if I did. After school, I had to play in the sports, do the practice and the games. And then after that, even junior year, because you have to take your SATs at the beginning of senior year. After that, after playing all these sports, I would have to go to these SAT prep courses, which was like another 30-minute train ride away in another neighborhood, because the high school didn't really offer it. Which is, you have to go to these separate courses that you had to pay extra money for. And then it was like, a college student that was a tutor and everything that would teach you for it. So I'm like, wow, that was so stressful. To have to go to being 16 years old and going through all of that. So I would get home a lot of times by 8, 9 p.m. And my mom's like, where you been all day? I'm like, I've been at school. So it's just that process. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to make it that hard for any kid in our future nation. Dendata says every child should know the basics of STEM. It should be an option to advance those studies in high school. Fair enough. That's good. Like to do advanced placement courses and stuff. One thing I think we should teach our children, which I think a lot of us can agree to that we didn't learn in high school, is finance. Like basically how to budget and finance, managing your money, and how that system works. So that for sure, I think is important to learn. What do you think about that?
I agree.
So that, all
Yeah,
right.
you have my agreement.
Okay. Yeah, because I think a lot of us.
Yep, you're right on point. Keep going.
I mean, hell, even today we can probably all agree how we mismanage our money. So that was important. I'm like, I wish I learned about how credit card debt worked in high school. That would have saved me. Well, thankfully, I didn't get as much trouble with it, but my siblings, oh my God, like what they didn't know, and then getting a credit card at 20 or 21 because, they out the house and, want to do their thing and then didn't understand what debt is. But again, that'll kind of reflect what our financial system is. in our own nation. It's just something to think about. Again, more to talk about. So, but these are important. Any questions in the chat? I'm gonna take a look at this World's Best Education poll and see if there's anything else interesting on this that is important to share. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And peace to everyone who joined us. Yep, teaching financial literacy is very important at a young age, for sure. Grown in Black, we can all agree to that. Um, and then it's going to be developing, like, I guess, a kind of system for the kids who can't learn as quickly, if there's any difficulty with that, even if they're developmentally delayed or not. What kind of like offers do we have for them to kind of get them up to speed to where they should be, you know? What do they have now?
Am I back in?
What happened?
Am I back in?
Yeah, were you off for a little bit?
Yes. You didn't.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice because I was going back and forth between the chat and then my other web browser looking at these stats.
Yeah, I got kicked out.
Well, that explains the silence that was going on.
I'm like, I'm like, oh God, how do I get back in? So I got it though, but I was like, oh, that was so funny. You didn't even realize it. Okay.
I had no idea. Well, I'm not really looking at the actual Google Hangout screen, so that was probably part of the problem. But you answered just in time. My question was, what do they have currently for the kids? Like, what do you think should be necessary for the kids who are developmentally delayed or don't learn as quickly as others? Like, what should be in place for them to kind of catch up and get up to speed with the kids that they should be up to, you know, whatever grade or age group they're in?
Well, that depends. Are we talking severely delayed, you know, mental?
So that's a good question. Yeah, like
what level are we?
So say let's just even start in early, like fifth grade level, elementary going on to like secondary school kind of level, or you know, like junior high school level, like where you can actually catch it and potentially do something about it. And like say, like
I want to say, I'm like, oh man, I gotta hold on.
Well, not assuming that the kid has like a serious developmental delay, kind of like cerebral palsy, or you know, like a chromosome deficiency where they're like, you know, have some congenital disorder. Like those are the most extreme cases. So, but more so like a kid who had difficulty catching up in science or math because, you know, maybe they didn't get the numbers and everything right away, which actually, well, I'll let you answer that because that just raised another question for me.
So my views, or this is purely, you know, in a hypothetical what if scenario, because since we're going down that route, I think that number one, we would see a decrease.
A decrease in
those numbers as far as our kids.
I think so too. I actually agree with you on that.
I think we're going to see a decrease in our, you know, if we were able to do this the way that we want to do it. I think we'd see a huge drop off. And I think for the ones, you know, depending on, you know, how severe we're talking, you know, who says that they have to finish in the time frame that's been established? You know, I mean, we know that you know, and maybe they go to a certain point and then maybe we put them on a different track. You know, depending on what their, you know, your belief as far as what their strengths are.
Right.
So, I mean, that's probably a little controversial, but
no. I think it's fair.
There are certain things or certain ideologies that I really believe in, and if I was able to make those you know, put them into practice, you know, in the actual practice, it would look something like that. You know, and really trying to meet a child where they are, and not put that, you know, that square peg, you know, trying to, you know, jam it in the wrong size hole.
No, absolutely. And of course, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, the only reference I have is the current education system that we live
Yeah.
in. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's the only because I've lived it and experienced it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm going off of. But then Dada made a good point. He said, regardless of where they're at in learning, they should be taught the importance of critical thinking when they're trying to
Yeah.
solve a problem in any field.
Mhm.
That is true. You know
Mhm.
what? Yeah, that is so because I didn't like it. I remember critical thinking courses weren't introduced until I went to college. And then
Yep.
like then I realized
And
how
it's really,
often you use it
mhm.
and how important it
Yeah.
is. So that's something we can consider to put in earlier than that high school or even junior high. I mean, it doesn't have to be a very complex course, but it's very important to understand how to do some critical thinking and problems.
Well, you can embed critical thinking into the actual curriculum,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
there, that higher level of thinking, right? There was a time when, that was kind of, if you took honors classes, that's how they were supposed to kind of engage you
Ah,
in that level of thinking. But you can embed that, we should always engage our kids that way,
right, right. How do you
you
feel
know.
about that separation with like advanced placement classes, honor classes? Like, does it make a good difference in your experience? Because I remember seeing like AP courses in high school, and then and it was really weird though. Like I said, like it's almost like you could take regular history, like U.S. history that was offered, but then an advanced placement course would be like U.S. Government in history. Like you
Right.
get a little bit more
It was
information.
like
I'm
getting
just like,
getting those almost an introduction to those college 100 courses,
right, right. That's what it was basically.
which is, which is a good thing, you know. But I took that track.
Right,
It worked best with how my brain kind of, so I took the AP, biology and chemistry, and you know
right.
um, and I was allowed, I would want for our kids to be allowed to do that, if
Yeah,
that is
that's
their
not
track.
bad.
But in order to balance it,
Right.
you've got to have that whole other part, that hands, because the kids like that are usually uh you can throw information at them,
Mhm.
and it kind of sticks, and it's strictly my viewpoint. Once again, it's coming from just what I've seen, lived, but also seen and observed, and not just in education. Some of this is really general to just our society. But you can
Mhm.
throw, and you're going to get that middle batch that it kind of sticks to. Well, what about the kids on the fringes?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, kids who don't learn that way need to have, but they need to be challenged just as much in whatever that field is. Does that
Right.
make sense? You
No,
know,
it
if you're
makes
going to
sense.
split it from, an academic AP, they also need to have those advanced experiences.
Right.
Mhm.
That's why I'm like,
Maybe
I feel
starting
like they
like
should
an
have that.
internship program. You know what I'm saying? Like, sooner. I really believe that a lot of this stuff should be introduced in middle school for our boys and our girls.
Right. And Vic Shepard made a point. He said critical thinking should be taught to elementary age children.
Yes.
And Dendata kind of amplified off of that. He said, yes, indeed, who, what, when, where, and why this happens. Yes, I agree with that. This leads me to another question, though. What would be, and guys in the chat, definitely give your opinion on this. What do you think should be qualifications on the teacher, like what qualifications should the teacher, the actual educators, have? Because again, going off of what happens to us here in the US, some teachers, some of them require a master's degree. If they're teaching at college level, a lot of them require a doctorate level depending on the course. And you can give again your opinion, Lishi, of how that works, because I mean we don't just want, and like we've all had the experience where depending on the teacher really depends on how good you do in the class. And again,
Mhm.
people learn differently, and I agree with you, Lishi, that a lot of it's going to be different there for us. Like it's just we believe in our children that much that you take them out of the system and the spectrum is going to change drastically on how well they learn. But do you think teachers should have certain qualifications prior to teaching? Like, how do we make sure they have those qualifications and go into that detail? Just something more to think about.
Right, right.
So you can definitely now we
I that's a good question.
Dawood's like children need to be taught the earth is round. No, don't either. So okay, Dawood, I appreciate that because that's going to be obvious. Now again, say you have, I guess, well, there's no flat earthers that's going to join us, but God forbid they do. How are you going to make sure that they're teaching that or that they know better than to teach our children some nonsense like that? Like, what are the qualifications? Because imagine, you know how the BAIO is. We're open to everyone in terms of as long as you're really require you to be black.
Right.
So who knows? Maybe someone from the Nation of Islam want to teach something differently than others. But like, what system do we have in place? It's just something to think about. And what are the qualifications? Some will have a higher level of qualifications than others, but it doesn't necessarily mean the one with the lower qualifications isn't qualified to do the job.
Yes.
So we have to base on what we want our qualifications to be. You
Yes.
hell, we probably already have some Moors in the organization. Do we want them
Right.
teaching our children? Well, humans were here. We were black people were on America before, so we can always go back. Like you don't want them to like that's so counterproductive. So we're gonna hope that they don't teach them that direction.
So, okay. So,
And I think I went to
and
two
we have
different
to,
things there. Two different. I went into qualifications, and then I also gave like unfortunately poor examples because Dawood just threw that out there. the damn round Earth, flat Earth nonsense. So it made me go into poor examples, unfortunately. But you guys get what I'm saying, and if you don't, let me know. I'll try to explain a little bit better. But yeah, go ahead, sis. I know, I just threw that out there. But in terms of qualifications for the teachers,
but
like,
no, I mean that's a really good question. And once again, um, I would probably love to hear the ideas of the other
I
people
know
that were part
I'm
of that
really
group
interested in hearing these ideas.
before
There's a lot
really,
of stuff out there.
yeah, because
Yeah, so
yeah, I mean, it could look, mm, yeah, I would want to hear what some of the thoughts are because I'm
well
sure,
for you right now with do you guys need specific qualifications to teach like
yeah,
when you
okay.
go
So if
through
you're
grade
looking,
school?
okay.
What's the requirement?
So yes, yes, you do. And so everything, if we're looking at the current system, and most people don't even, realize it. I didn't even
Yeah,
realize
we
it until
don't.
I really, I'm taking this government class.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you don't realize is that everything is dictated by the laws that we live under.
Right.
So our whole education system, teachers' qualifications, that's all dictated by the state government. They set that up, the qualifications, and it's
Yeah.
changed because you didn't always have to have a bachelor's degree to teach,
Do they
the
you didn't need one
laws
before,
have
right? Do
changed.
they require one now?
Yes. Or yeah, you have to have a bachelor's degree. Now there are alternate ways to get that, but in definitely public schools
Mm-hmm.
to hold a bachelor's degree. Um, yeah. So they kind of dictate the terms of the qualifications that the educators have. So when we say what do we want ours to look at, well, that is based on what kind of society do we want, and how do we
Mm-hmm.
want to, what are our thoughts around education?
Right.
So, who says that you have to have a bachelor's degree? Why can't you say, 5 years experience or something like that? kind of counter that because everyone learns differently. And I've come across people who don't have degrees that are some of the most, worldly folks as far as life experience. Don't we want those kind of folks teaching our kids? You know,
Right.
tapping into that child who thinks that way and sees the world that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that we would decide how that would look, and I would once again like to think we would embrace that. Everything. If we're going to embrace yin and yang and balance, that if we're going to have that bookworm kind of person, that person with the letters, we need to balance that with teachers who may not have the letters behind the name, but bring
Right.
can teach the same course and bring a whole different level
Right.
to it. You know, yeah,
And I mean, it could be that person that the kids connect with more, even the one with the lower qualifications is something that the
yeah.
kids just learn more from that teacher.
Learn more and may really tap in,
They
that
tap
and
into
giving
it.
them the freedom to. I think sometimes we put too many restrictions on how teachers teach, and all that come. I mean, I just had no idea how much of what we do is or determined by state laws. We don't even
Mhm.
realize it. It's just it's ridiculous. So
Yeah. And
it's
then I'm a
we're talking nation. We're talking wow. We get to determine those things.
right.
And once
Mm,
again, build off of the flaws that some fundamental flaws that we see with this system, that we know adversely affect our kids.
mhm.
So how can we make sure not to do that? And
Absolutely.
really try to meet the diverse needs of our kids. I think those needs are going to change, as I said before. I think we're going to. You put us in the perfect conditions, and well, we know what we do in the perfect conditions.
Right.
We know
And
what we think it's like. So
and then Dada said an obvious one. He said it depends on the child's access to information. Sticking with
yeah.
the facts versus some made up religious beliefs will get us far. Basically, sticking with the facts will get us far. The people that homeschool their children knows
So
more.
clear separation of church and state, and that's what you're
Yeah.
saying. Clear separation. Okay.
So, and he says he just put another one. My brother-in-law is great at math, but holds no degree. He had to educate a teacher on a problem my niece had. So it depends. Yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. It depends, which is kind of why I brought that up.
Yeah.
But I was hearing, and you guys can add in more of this than I can because when I was speaking to one of our other sisters at Joa about, the education. Well, not really. We weren't talking a lot about education, but more so how people transition in terms of the conscious community, so to speak, from hearing, understanding one thing and then finding out it's all a lie. And so they questioned everything. So she said she's met a lot of people who take their children out of school to homeschool them. But now that it's almost as if they're teaching their children absurd theories like the flat earth theory. And she's like,
Right.
no, there's people actually teaching their children that. And it's, I can understand their fear and they're like, oh, I don't want my kid to be part of this system. Like I can understand that reaction here in the United States. I can't even blame them for that. But like, as you see, not everybody's qualified to teach.
So here's the
You
thing.
really don't
So
want
that okay. So that child from that particular situation goes out into the world.
right.
How does that child then react as a citizen of that nation and as that state?
Well, and
Is he or
that's another
she,
thing. What they're
are they regular Joe? Can they work? Yeah. Well, okay.
right.
If you believe that the earth is flat, but you can still fill this position, you can still do this job, okay,
Mhm.
more power
Well,
to you.
even I think the point she was making, like, I guess some of them, some of the people of particularly the conscious community who took
Mm-hmm.
their children out of school are not even focusing on the things that's important, like the subjects of science, reading, math. Like maybe so more so reading, they're more
Right.
so pushing the history, the Black history, the real Black
Right. Of
history,
course. Of course. Of course.
which is fine, but that can't be all they learn, all
Right.
the children learn. Obviously, like it's not going to work. You got to teach them other things in math. So that's where some of the homeschooling, not all, of course, but some of it just went completely left. So
Right.
the
And
idea
and it's all mainly, like you said, because of
here,
um
I think it's from being
yeah,
here.
it's the way the system is set up
Right.
here.
just to
Um,
hear them and send them
yeah,
out the door.
you just can't take it anymore.
Right.
I would like to think in my perfect world, once again, I see for folks who choose to stay here.
Vic Shepard, that goes without saying. He said flat earthers are exempt from teaching, no exception. That goes without
Okay.
saying.
All right,
I'm
fine.
annoyed that I'm bringing this up, but Dawood threw it back in the conversation. I'm just like, damn it, you put me back into this. But Kofi said something earlier. He said the only reason why they started sending people to school is so they could read instructions at the factory so they don't get their fingers or limbs cut off. He said the Wright brothers were dropouts. You really could only teach something like a skill.
Right.
That's fair. And that's the point where we're making. Not necessarily everyone is qualified to teach. Like you can have all these degrees, doesn't necessarily make you a good teacher because we've
No, it
all
does
had
not.
experience of teachers that we connected with and
Mhm.
learned more from, and they probably didn't have such an advanced level of education and degrees.
Right.
So
So that's where that life experience comes in, right? Or
right.
that world experience, and
Right, exactly. And
yeah,
then and
and I
actually
think
I want to say Vic said it earlier. He said, yeah, a combination of school and experience.
yeah,
And I agree with that. I agree with that. Dude says because if you don't love black children enough, you won't be patient. We different.
mhm,
Yeah, so that's true. I think, the love we have for our children, we will be patient into making sure they get to the level they will. And I genuinely believe once we start this and have our own, like the paradigm is going to change so much. Like you'll notice a huge difference in how the children learn, taking them out of this current system and putting them
right,
into our own, and when what we focus on teaching them. And that's the idea, to control the socioeconomic and political context of our environment. Once we have control of that, a lot of the things that we're going through now or that we notice is going to significantly change.
and like you said, that's that perfect. You know, what's going to be in result? Will this work for our children? Well, we see it
Right,
already working. If you look at some of these programs that are already here in America, where ran by some, pretty strong, powerful Black men and women who
right,
are really putting that, expecting more of our children, uh, covering all bases, where they're using
right.
that village mentality as far as taking care of the social welfare, and emotional things of that child, not beyond the school. Too bad, what's going on in our neighborhoods. You see those kids. I mean, look at the graduation rates. They're
Oh my gosh,
ridiculous.
yeah. Yeah, it's sad. Like
No, no, those. I mean, but those right when we're in that condition, I mean, we're going to college at crazy numbers. I think those kids are going to be the next uh, wave of our entrepreneurs and things like that,
right, but then
because
like
they have a certain consciousness,
right. But
coming
even
out of
the
the environment.
trade-off is almost like we completely, because back then when no longer the vocational schools aren't really pushed,
Mhm.
those classes that we talked about before, the important ones that help even develop like building and cooking and whatever, those little things aren't really pushed. It's almost like we're just going to be we have like a bunch of high degrees,
Mhm.
and now we kind of put ourselves on this pedestal where it's like, well, I'm not going to do, that. Like, why do I care about, building this if I can just run this business? So like the building part, I think, like having those basic skills like carpentry,
Mhm.
contracting, construction, like we
But
definitely still
you're
need that.
always going to have, just like you've got the person who may have that higher level of whatever, there's always that person who likes to do the hands-on part too.
Actually,
That
there's,
acts
yeah.
like they kind of taps in. You don't think?
Yeah, no. Actually, I agree with you on that one. I was reading a question. Adam just made a good question. This is directed towards me. He said, "How many skilled and professionals know how to put a well-organized course or training program together?" Personally, I don't know, but we can figure out how to organize that within the BAIO on the Ning site. Because that's a good question. That's a really good question. And it was probably a lot more people than we realize.
Hmm.
I just need people to join their professional groups and their state chapters and, start having these, that's the whole point of getting these meetups and everything together to kind of talk about these things. Because yeah, that's important. I really want to know like how many people can put a well organized course of training program together, and it may differ, and the numbers may be small at first, but that's fine. The ideas are open, but yes, that's a good question, and that I'd like to know that too. So we got to figure out a way to kind of get that organized and put together on our site.
Right.
Yeah, study process. Every who has a skill can use this. Okay. Dendata, I'm actually not familiar with the ADDIE process. It's ADDIE. Have you heard of that one?
Say it again.
The ADDIE process, ADDIE. Is every, I'm going to say everyone who has a skill can use this.
Oh,
Please share
okay.
that
Okay, I
with us.
just
Are
looked it
you
up.
familiar with that?
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. It's an instructional design model. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for that, brother. Appreciate that. We'll definitely look into that.
It may already be on our site, maybe under STEM. Let me see.
Yeah, we can definitely use that and put that together. But yeah, I wanted to bring up this discussion just to kind of get everybody thinking. I knew it was going to be one like, damn, really, like, yeah, we got to consider this. And I wanted to focus more on the smaller children, start early, in life and stuff, not so much older college graduate stuff, or getting to that level because they're going to start
Right.
making their own individual choices. But again, if we intend on having universities, which I'm sure we do,
Mhm.
that's something to also spin off into to
Right.
get. So he said, yes, the 5 phases: analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Thank you. So, yes, using that, if we can organize something and develop something that works, that's important.
It is.
But
And with little kids, like you're saying, you know,
right, the little our babies.
the babies.
Yeah.
Of course, if you believe in the model that, and I say model because that's how most of your beliefs in education are modeled after something you saw, heard,
Mm-hmm.
agreed. That what are I believe that we should teach more from a strength based method, and I think it's because of my therapy background.
Okay.
um,
Can
but I've
you?
also seen, and I'm going to define what I mean by that.
Okay.
So when I say strength based, you know children, we at a certain age we need to continue to embrace the way they learn, the way they engage the world, play.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of social interaction should be a lot of the focus before we start putting on these some of the requirements that we put on our kids.
Okay.
Um, uh,
Do you
and
have any examples? I mean, I know what
yeah,
you're saying. I know what
I'm,
you're
I'm
saying.
trying to I'm trying to frame a thought to get my words together.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, okay, so kids like to play. I don't think they do enough of that in school. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, most kids go from either they have no experience with being in school or daycare, and they get thrown into the current, system, which is you have to come in knowing a lot. And those kids who don't sometimes struggle. So because they're maybe because of personality, they may still need more of that play. I think if we let our kids play a little more, and even in the way that we engage them, you know
Mm-hmm.
our kids will do better at younger ages, um, instead of they come in and immediately it's just this, they start testing
Well, yeah. What age do they start pushing?
and preparing for tests, and so you start off and it's like, yeah, I mean, immediately you start taking a lot of tests. There are tests, the first month what, 6 weeks of school, they're testing, you know.
Oh,
That's crazy.
that is crazy. So,
And they
gee,
start, there are certain tests they take in kindergarten. I mean, there are tests all along, the way, different
that
things
is
that they're,
so
looking for.
early. Oh my God.
Um,
It's so
and I think,
stressful.
right. So if we took that out and allowed teachers to still do, what are our basics? Reading, writing,
Right.
language and social skills. Of course, I think history should be taught that young. Um, math, um, and
No,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the basics, right?
Right, right.
And how we allow that to be taught. Teachers teach now like they're on fire. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
You're
that is
teaching
so
them,
stressful.
there's and you've got these large class sizes and all these other things that are going on.
And so you
And
didn't even have time to pay attention to the kid that didn't catch the information because it's just
yes,
so much you gotta speed
right,
up and try to keep it going for the rest of the kids. Yeah, that's
right.
so.
I always thought, I don't know how it would look, but I love the co-teach model that's currently used in some places. I think that should be a standard, where two teachers teach a class instead of one.
I heard about, yeah, that
You
should
you want to reach a diverse group of people, well, then you need more than one person trying to do it. Where I can play to these strengths, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it can be done wonderfully, and I've seen it done. And I think that that's one model that has a lot of potential to be that could change the dynamics in our nation.
yeah. And you brought it up earlier, the start of class times. Because
Yes.
I vaguely remember, I want to say like a year ago, I was reading something and they were doing a study and they were just saying how basically what you were saying, the class times that we have our students learning and our children learning it, it's just not working. It's
No,
making it worse. Like you can't just start early in the morning and then go on for 8 hours
yeah.
in a day and expect them to retain anything. Um, so what, like, how would you, if you had it your way in our nation, of course, this is
Right.
up for discussion and,
So
but
number one, let's look at why the current, this is the class times are the way that they are. Originally that had nothing to do with, education. It was to accommodate farmers,
mm-hmm.
the current
How?
class schedule. So because kids had to get up, they had to do chores and that kind of thing. Um, so it's an old thing as far as our school starting as early as they start, and then when you start getting into the fall forward, fall backward thing, once again, it was all around a society that caters to farmers, if I'm not mistaken. The crazy times that we have. Well, do we live in that society now? No, no
No.
one's farming. You know, um, depending on where you live in the United States. I live out here now. You guys get a lot more sunshine, things like that. I
Right.
don't know why they still do the time thing. I think that's it's kind of weird. But all of that was said a long time ago, and we're still kind of based off of it. And we know that it doesn't work, especially for today's
Right.
children. High school kids start way too early, you know, and this is what so-called science and things like that show. Research shows how their brains, are developing, and they learn better if we were to push the start time back. I think they said as much as an hour. You'd be teaching the kids that were more more alert and ready to learn versus kids that are tired and sluggish. Because most of them don't get enough sleep the night before.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. Most of it is just they have already proven, and I don't know if anybody else has read up on this, but I like to read silly things I don't know. But science has shown, I guess, this different research, that it's hard for teenagers to turn their brain down, fall asleep. For their brain kind of, it takes them a lot longer after they lay down for everything to kind of settle. So, up to an hour, sometimes hours. So if this kid goes to bed, um, they're already not tired, right? Because, they're going through the growth spur, all the things that go on during, those ages, those, teenage years. So if we know that these kids' brains take longer to shut
Mm-hmm.
down, and that we're teaching the kids that are really sleep deprived, why can't we, and studies show this, why can't we push it back an hour if that benefits our kids?
Right. Because I was visiting my sister in Atlanta back in August, and God, like she has three kids, and one just started high school, one is in middle school, and one is in elementary school. And I
Right?
was
I've been there.
at the but yeah, and so she had every year. So it was sad as she worked night shifts. So she was just like, so she'll come home from work like at 5:30 in the morning and like rushing to get the kids, make sure the kids get ready for school. And what was sad is the elementary school one, my niece, her youngest, like she had the earliest start time. And I was like, why
Mm.
is the school starting so early? She was like, the bus picks her up like at 7 on the dot in the morning. Like, I'm like, what? There's some days I'm still asleep at 7. And the
Yeah.
girl had to get there, she had to be there. I think class started, like she had to be at school and everything by 7:30, 7:45-ish. But I'm like, damn, that is so early. So it was really important. And she was the hardest one to get to go to sleep on time because she's the youngest, wanted to do all this stuff. And you know how kids become, like, dehydrated philosophers before they go to sleep.
Right,
All of
right,
a
right.
sudden they got all these questions and theories, and they always thirsty. So so it was always hard getting her. It was such a damn hassle getting her into bed. But she had to go to bed. Like it was like, damn, we gotta get her to sleep like at damn near 7, 8 o'clock. Like not staying awake past 8 o'clock. It just wasn't happening because she had to wake up the earliest. But just looking at that process, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I didn't realize they started kids so early, this young. Like, that's insane. So I was like, this is the system we part of. So definitely, we don't want this in our system. Early start times. But yeah, we definitely got to change that. And I mean, hopefully it's a habit we can change because it seems like it's something we're used to, especially living and working here,
Mhm.
basically all our lives. We're basically stuck on that same farm clock. So that's going to be, a good discussion on how to transition out of that to give our kids the best chance.
Yeah, really, yeah, that would be awesome to kind of see
But
it
yeah.
on a large scale basis. That would be awesome. And are there any other questions in the chat?
Just kind of conversations. I mean, they made basically points, just agreeing with what we said. Actually, Dundada said that sounds like a show down the road. I think we put a lot of ideas out there, so which was the idea of this show. Because I'm like, we got a lot of things to think about, so we
Yes.
definitely can cover a lot of these in detail in the future. But if you guys have questions, let us know. And what Ronan Black said, the problem I had with school was the hours are similar to a job. Felt like I was
Mhm.
going to work, especially in high school. And Vic Shepard
Mhm.
said, "Yep, that was the point."
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. Yeah.
I said
Exactly.
that's exactly what I figured. Is there a good one? I figured it out in my 20s. Okay, so yeah, because I figured out it was like work when I was my senior year in high school. Because I was like, what am I doing with myself? Like this is insane. I can't be waking up doing all this traveling, go to school,
Mhm.
then have to do sports, and have to come home. But yeah, so they just agreeing with that. It was tax. He said it was tax funded babysitting.
Yeah.
That is a good way of putting it.
I
So,
like that. Yeah.
but yeah, that was the system. But guys, let us know if you have any questions. We're about to cut out, and just kind of something to bring up for the future.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about. Things that I think we didn't really consider, but it's definitely doable. It's just coming up, with a consensus, what people want,
Mhm.
what's the best idea. And I genuinely think just getting out of this country, being on land where the majority, a lot of things will fall into place in the sense that, our children will already have a better chance
Yes.
um, at learning and stuff. And then, I think hell, just knowing, I feel like we're going to feel a lot more
Oh, and
comfortable.
and we need to make sure they learn another language. We need
Yeah,
to.
they need to learn another
I feel
language.
like
It's
we need to be like
important.
Melina and implement Kiswahili.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. I'm actually learning, like, and I meant to bring it up to. I'm learning a little bit of Lugandan now from our BIO brother in Uganda. He wanted to start teaching people Lugandan. Even if you don't go there, it's just something to know. Just learn another language. He wanted to. I told him to try to start on the education group,
Yeah.
but being that he is in East Africa and Uganda, he doesn't really get easy access to internet that often. So it's kind of difficult for him. So I do a lot of messaging with him through WhatsApp.
Okay.
And actually, I can share his number. I know Dundada has it, but he
Oh,
was
that's
teaching me
wonderful.
some phrases in Luganda, and it's actually not that difficult. I was surprised, and he shared a little, like a booklet with me that kind of go through the languages. So, I mean, it's not. I don't plan on moving to Uganda, so I don't know if I'm gonna ever use it. But I just like learning new languages. But
So
yes,
how are
learning.
you doing with it? I want to know now.
Yeah, I know because I remember you brought this up before. I was like, I gotta tell her about this. So I'm gonna give you his number. You can message him
Okay.
through WhatsApp and
Okay.
everything.
We got to
But
find out somebody who speaks Kiswahili in the group. There's got to be.
I'm sure there is. We gotta actually no, we have members in the Kenya chapter. Maybe one. I'm sure one of them do. We gotta look into that. But yeah, definitely learning a new language is really important. I can go into the science behind that. It's like I won't do it now because it takes a lot of detail and like I have to name parts of the brain. But I've
Yes,
actually
yes.
physically seen where how
Changes.
learning a new language in a severe illness like a stroke
Mm-hmm.
actually made all
More
the
food
difference
synthesis.
on this person's communication level because like this particular person knew two languages, English and Spanish, and he lived in America for years, so thankfully he spoke Spanish at home but spoke English in his work life and everything, and he ended up having a stroke.
Oh,
And this thankfully the stroke, I mean, it took out one of his speech patterns in his brain, in a particular area of the brain,
right,
which
right,
I'll go
right.
into those details in later. But anyway, most people after a stroke, they won't be able to talk if it hits that speech pattern of the brain. They won't be able to talk. It'll knock out their speech for sure. But he actually kept the ability to speak Spanish very fluently and knew he can
Mhm.
explain everything that happened. That made all the difference in taking care of this man because no one knew what happened at home, but he did, and he remembered everything. Thankfully, because the stroke, thankfully, wasn't that bad, but he was still able to communicate. Like, and some of us have seen, if you had the unfortunate experience to see a family member who had a stroke and what was the
Mhm.
after effect of that.
Right,
So a
right.
lot of times speech can come back, but it takes a lot of speech therapy, a lot of training. It's a lot of work with therapists and other groups of people to kind of help you get back to where you need to. And it could take months to do this, but the
Right.
fact that he could retain Spanish was made all the difference. And like that, it was the prime example right then and there where I was like, oh shit, I need to become fluent in another language. And the neurosurgeon I was working with at the time said, yeah. He was like, this is how important it is, and he explained to me the process of how it works. So that was interesting. Holub had a question. He said, have any other sisters expressed an interest in hosting the sister show on a weekly basis? I have to, one did. She wanted to do her own show,
Okay.
Black Buddha, but I have to check up with her to see how she's doing with that process. She has a little bit more difficulty with working with YouTube and technology. She's not familiar with it. So I have to work with her to kind of get that going. And I apologize, people. Like this week has been really crazy for me out here. I've been traveling to different villages every day, which has been exhausting as hell. I took 8 flights over 5 days. Like that is not fun. So I have one more week of this village travel season, and then I can get back to like putting a lot more attention on the site and making sure I'm a little bit more active. But yes, Holup, I'm gonna follow up with her to make sure
Um,
she see how she is with that process. And whoever start, any other sisters want to start a YouTube channel or host a sister show, we are all open for that.
like yourself, Belle, I've just right now my schedule's kind of crazy with
Right, and
school.
it happens. It happens. We go.
And hold on, both schools, me in school working on my second master's, and then work school. I'm like, I just have to get through October,
I
and then
know.
I can
Get
just
to
see
the
my
next.
way there. I just gotta, I have to, get through October, and my load eases up a lot. So I gotta definitely, I've been tuning in less because I've been going into work early, staying a little bit late, running around. You know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and Travis Rins shared some information. He said there's a free Swahili lessons on Duolingo app. I'm gonna have to
I
download that
didn't
app.
see Swahili on it. I had to. Okay, I was doing looking for Spanish, but when I didn't see, maybe they added it. Cool. I'll have to look for it. Thank you. I
Yeah,
was using
I'll
Duolingo.
text it
Yeah,
to you.
and I got rid of it because I was like, eh. And now, when I thought about it, I thought I looked. I didn't see Swahili, so I have to look again. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like the app itself. It's cute. Very cute.
I didn't know about this app. I need to get it downloaded. But yes, thank you, fam, for participating. It was lovely having you guys listen to us this Saturday. I hope we put a lot of ideas in your head,
Yeah.
discussions that we can have more. Clearly, need more discussion in the future. But yeah, we're looking forward to see. But I mean, we didn't touch into a lot of things, and we also did cover a lot of things going both
Yeah.
ways. So
Yeah.
at least
We were still working our way.
right, we're working our way through this, and it's a lot of food for thought. So definitely, we're just gonna have to get people organized. I would love to, get all the educators in the group and see what they think, or what direction they
I
want to
would
go.
love that.
This is definitely important. We're talking about planning an educational system for our future, so for our future children and a future nation, all of that. So we definitely want to talk about this a lot more. But thank you, family. Have a nice weekend. Peace. Love you all. We'll catch up with you later. Thank you.
All
All right.
right. Bye, Belle. Peace, family.
Bye.